I needed a new roommate quickly and eventually settled on this chick from Florida who was moving out to San Diego. She initially came off as a little goofy and naive over the phone, but in person, she was just strange. She had no sense of personal boundaries, would eat all my food without even asking, use my laptop in my room when I wasn't home to browse Plenty of Fish, calm, and would barge into my room whenever I had friends over just to say the weirdest, most random things. All in just the first week, her awkwardness quickly escalated into discomfort. She had zero respect for privacy, knocking on the bathroom door repeatedly, asking unnecessary questions whenever I was in there. Once, I caught her trying on my clothes without permission. Clothes I hadn't even worn yet. When confronted, she acted as if it was completely normal, as if everyone swapped clothes with their roommates regularly. Things got stranger. In the evenings, she invited over a co-worker from Subway. Along with the co-worker came the boyfriend, who had recently been released from jail, and several of his sketchy-looking friends. They made me uncomfortable from day one, always eyeing my belongings, glancing around like they were checking inventory. My roommate was oblivious, thrilled just to have people to entertain, even if they were clearly using her. They laughed at her awkward jokes, egged on her bizarre antics, and shamelessly encouraged her weird stories. She had an awful habit of losing her keys and leaving our apartment window cracked open. She openly bragged about it as if it were a clever solution rather than an obvious security risk. I told her repeatedly how unsafe that was, but she never listened, laughing it off and saying that no one would dare climb into our place. But I saw those guys watching her when she talked about it, whispering to each other, and it made my stomach turn. Then one afternoon, I returned home from work exhausted and ready to relax. But as soon as I walked through the door, my heart sank. The place was trashed. My large TV, laptop, smaller bedroom TV, a bunch of DVDs, my prescription glasses, even a wedding dress my aunt had entrusted me to sell online. All gone. I felt sick, my mind racing. It didn't take long to realize exactly who did it. I immediately called my roommate, frantic and yelling, asking her what she'd gotten us into. Surprisingly calm, she told me she was just getting home herself and had already called the cops on me. She said her broken old laptop had been stolen and accused me of orchestrating the theft to get rid of her useless belongings. My anger exploded at the absurdity of her accusation. When the police arrived, I was enraged, yelling at her, pointing my finger inches from her face as she shrank back against the wall. I was sure the officers would see this and arrest me for harassment, but when they pulled me aside, they spoke gently, acknowledging she seemed emotionally unstable. They advised me quietly to avoid finding roommates through Craigslist in the future. Feeling drained and frustrated, I demanded her apartment key right there in front of police, who agreed it was best. She handed it over reluctantly. After they left, I packed up her single box of belongings and placed it on the sidewalk. She left without another word, disappearing into the night. The police investigation wasn't going anywhere. They had too many burglary cases and too few leads. I felt hopeless, my anxiety mounted, as I wondered how I'd afford replacements for everything stolen. Angry and desperate, I hatched a risky plan. I contacted my ex, roommate Subway co-worker and her boyfriend, telling them confidently I had hidden security cameras inside my apartment, placed strategically for exactly this event. I bluffed hard, claiming I had crystal clear video footage of everyone involved. Footage that the police would soon review unless I got every single item back untouched. For hours, I waited, nerves shot, pacing my empty apartment, regretting the lie, even as I relied on it. My stomach knotted every time I heard footsteps outside or cars driving slowly by. Finally, near midnight, a beat-up sedan pulled quietly into the parking lot behind my apartment complex. The doors opened and my heart pounded as I recognized the men. Without exchanging words, they silently, gently unloaded my belongings, setting them carefully on the pavement, just steps from my back porch. They threw angry, wary glances at my window before driving off, tires reaching softly. Gathering my belongings, I found every item accounted for. My TVs, laptop, DVDs, the wedding dress, even my glasses, all undamaged. I shook with relief, quickly carrying everything inside and locking every window and door carefully. I realized how lucky I'd been. My bluff had worked, but the feeling of invasion lingered, leaving me shaken. In the days following, I still jumped at small noises and triple-checked every lock. The police were impressed I'd got my belongings back, but warned me again how easily things could have gone badly. They suggested new security measures, even giving me flyers for camera systems and alarms. I took their advice and installed several real cameras around the apartment immediately. No more bluffs, no more chances. I never heard from the strange roommate again. Last I heard from a mutual acquaintance, she moved in with a relative somewhere else in California. Her co-workers were fired after getting caught stealing from Subway's registers, and her group of friends faded from sight entirely. My apartment gradually felt safe again, but something fundamental had changed. I grew cautious, reluctant to trust strangers. I stopped using Craigslist entirely, choosing instead a professional roommate finding service that screened people carefully. I got lucky once, but reality hit me hard. Trusting blindly was dangerous. It wasn't just about stolen TVs or laptops. My physical safety had been on the line, and I hadn't fully realized it until it was almost too late. Now I see clearly how important boundaries, security, and common sense truly are. It's one life lesson I'll never forget. It was a rainy Wednesday afternoon when I came across the ad on Craigslist. I had been looking for a unique lamp to complete my living room decor, and this one seemed perfect. The lamp had a vintage design with intricate patterns carved into its base, and a shade that looked like it was made of stained glass. The seller's ad claimed it was an antique, and the price was surprisingly low. I couldn't resist. I quickly sent a message expressing my interest. Within an hour, I received a response from the seller. He said his name was John, and he was moving out of town, which was why he needed to sell the lamp quickly. He gave me an address to pick it up. I found it odd that the address was in a part of town known for its abandoned buildings, but I thought maybe he was using a storage unit. I decided to go that same day. I grabbed my raincoat and an umbrella, then headed out. The drive was short, but the closer I got to the address, the more uneasy I felt. The buildings in this area were old and dilapidated. Most had boarded up windows and doors, and there were hardly any people around. When I reached the address, it was clear this place was abandoned, too. It was an old factory, its windows shattered and the large metal doors covered in rust. I hesitated for a moment, considering turning back. But then I thought about the lamp. I convinced myself that maybe John was using this place temporarily. I walked up to the door and pushed it open. It creaked loudly, echoing through the empty building. Inside, it was dark and smelled of dampness and decay. I called out, "Hello, John? I'm here for the lamp." A voice responded from the shadows. "I'm in here. Come this way." I followed the voice down a long, narrow hallway. My footsteps echoed off the concrete walls, and I felt a chill run down my spine. At the end of the hallway, I saw a faint light coming from a room on the right. I entered the room and saw John standing next to the lamp. It looked just as beautiful as it did in the pictures. John was a tall man with a rough appearance. His clothes were dirty and his hair was unkempt. He didn't look like someone who owned a beautiful antique lamp. I tried not to let my discomfort show. As I approached him, "Here's the lamp," he said. "Do you have the money?" I nodded and reached into my pocket to pull out the cash. As I handed it to him, I noticed the look in his eyes change. There was a coldness there that made me uneasy. Before I could react, he grabbed my arm and twisted it behind my back. The pain was sharp and immediate. "What are you doing?" I cried out. "Shut up," he hissed. "Give me your wallet and phone." I was terrified. My heart pounded in my chest as I fumbled to comply. He snatched my wallet and phone from my hands and then shoved me to the floor. I hit the ground hard. The breath knocked out of me. "Stay down," he ordered. "If you try to get up, I'll hurt you." I lay there scared and helpless. As he rummaged through my belongings, I could hear him muttering to himself, but I couldn't make out the words. My mind was racing, trying to think of a way out of the situation. Then I heard a noise from the hallway. John heard it, too. He turned his head sharply, looking toward the door. Before he could react, a loud voice shouted, "Police, freeze." 2 officers burst into the room, their guns drawn. John tried to run, but they were on him in seconds, wrestling him to the ground and handcuffing him. I lay there, stunned and shaking. One of the officers came over to me. "Are you okay?" he asked, helping me to sit up. "I think so," I stammered. "How did you find me?" "We've been watching this area," the officer explained. "There have been reports of muggings and robberies. When we saw you enter the building, we suspected you might be in trouble." I nodded, still in shock. They helped me to my feet and escorted me out of the building. As we walked to the police car, I glanced back at the lamp. It was still sitting there untouched, a silent witness to the whole ordeal. At the police station, I gave my statement. The officers were kind and patient, assuring me that John would be behind bars for a long time. They returned my wallet and phone, both of which were thankfully intact. I drove home in a daze, replaying the events in my mind. I couldn't believe how close I'd come to real danger just for a lamp. As I pulled into my driveway, I felt a sense of relief wash over me. I was safe. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw John's face and felt the pain in my arm. It would take time to recover from the scare, but I was grateful to be alive. I learned a valuable lesson that day, and next time, I would be much more careful about where I went and who I trusted. The lamp was beautiful, but it wasn't worth risking my life. My mother and stepdad have a ranch way out in the countryside. They've raised cattle and horses for decades, living a quiet life away from town. Recently, they decided it was time to replace their old Ford work truck. It had served them faithfully, but age was catching up and repairs were becoming too frequent and expensive. They bought a shiny new truck, parked it proudly by the barn, and listed the old one for sale. Within days, a lady from a rural area about 4 hours away responded to the ad. She sounded extremely interested, but immediately started making excuses. She couldn't drive halfway to meet them because of health issues, she claimed. She insisted my stepdad deliver the truck directly to her property. My stepdad, being generous to a fault, agreed. My mother instantly felt uneasy. She's always been wary of strangers, especially ones who won't meet halfway. But my stepdad wouldn't listen, reassuring her it was probably nothing. The drive was long through desolate countryside, dense forests, and winding gravel roads. Finally, after nearly 5 hours, they arrived at the woman's place, a neglected property set far back from the road, hidden by overgrown trees and brush. The woman greeted them at the gate, appearing much healthier than her earlier claims suggested. Right away, she launched into a long, rambling story about bank errors, insisting she could only pay with a check dated for the following week. My mom's suspicions grew immediately. The woman also asked broadly to leave the truck's plates registered in my stepdad's name. My mother excused herself, dragging my stepdad away to argue. She didn't want to take a check or leave the plates. Eventually, she went about the plates but lost the argument over the check. My stepdad was too trusting and simply wanted the deal done. They left the truck and drove home. Another long 4-hour drive through darkening roads and growing uncertainty. As expected, the check bounced hard when they tried to cash it on the date given. When they called, the woman dodged them repeatedly. Weeks passed before she finally answered, claiming she'd been hospitalized, adding more complicated excuses and wild details to her story. Fed up, my stepdad finally lost patience. He bluntly informed her they'd be coming back to reclaim their truck. That weekend, they made the long drive again, this time towing a flatbed trailer behind them in case the truck had been damaged or was no longer drivable. The entire drive felt eerie as heavy clouds gathered, darkening the sky as they neared her property. When they arrived, the place felt abandoned. The gate hung open, creaking in the wind, and nobody responded when they knocked on the door. They found the old Ford hidden in a dusty shed, its paint scratched and a headlight broken, but thankfully still running. My stepdad quickly loaded it onto the flatbed, nervously glancing around, eager to leave. My mom, however, was angry. Her frustration boiled over, and she scribbled an angry note, slipping it under the woman's door before they departed. Thanks for nothing. About 15 minutes down the isolated road, my mom's phone buzzed loudly, startling them both. The screen flashed an unknown number. Hesitantly, my mom answered. It was a woman, angry and shrieking. She threatened to take the note to the RCMP and press charges for harassment. My mom quickly retorted, reminding her she'd have to explain her attempt at fraud as well. The line suddenly went dead. Relieved but shaken, my stepdad focused on driving as the sky darkened into an ominous storm. They passed empty fields, abandoned barns, and endless stretches of dense woods. The wind was now fiercely blowing, throwing branches across the gravel road ahead. The drive felt unusually tense. Then something even stranger happened. A pair of headlights appeared in their rear view mirror. At first distant, the vehicle quickly approached, moving dangerously fast. As it closed in, my parents saw it was an old black truck similar to theirs. The driver pulled so close, they feared he'd ram their trailer. Nervous, my stepdad sped up, but the black truck matched their speed. It swerved violently behind them, flashing lights, honking wildly, then suddenly passed, cutting them off, forcing them to brake sharply. Panicked, they stopped completely, gripping the wheel tightly. The black truck halted a few feet ahead, headlights blazing in the darkening evening. The driver stepped out, a tall, rough-looking man in ragged clothes, unfamiliar to them. He walked toward their truck aggressively. My mom quickly dialed 911, but the remote countryside meant help would take a long time. The stranger banged his fist against my stepdad's window, screaming incoherently. He accused him of theft, saying he was a woman's husband, and they had no right to take the truck back. My stepdad, voice shaking but firm, claimed the balance check, the agreement, everything. The man became angrier, trying to open the door, but luckily it was locked. When he couldn't get in, he backed away, shouting threats. Eventually, he returned his truck, gunned the engine, and disappeared down the road, leaving my parents stunned and terrified. They waited, shaken, until police finally arrived. The officers knew exactly who the couple was, known troublemakers with criminal records involving fraud and violence. They told my parents they'd done the right thing reclaiming their truck, but warned them sternly never to return. My parents drove home, deeply unsettled. Days later, strange things began happening at their ranch. Gates were found mysteriously open, animals set loose at night, fences deliberately cut. One morning, my mom found disturbing tire marks circling their driveway. Each incident was small enough to avoid police attention, but frighteningly deliberate. Then one evening, my mom spotted a black truck parked at the far edge of their property. The same truck. They immediately called the police, who arrived too late. The vehicle was gone, leaving only tire tracks as evidence. They never saw the truck again after that. The disturbances eventually stopped, leaving an unsettling peace. But the fear lingered. My stepdad installed cameras and alarms around their ranch, always keeping doors locked tightly. The experience changed them both. My stepdad finally learned caution, and my mother became more vigilant than ever. Neither spoke much about it, but the memories of that long, dark road and the terrifying confrontation never faded. They'd gotten their truck back, but at a heavy price. Their sense of safety was forever damaged, replaced by constant suspicion of strangers.